Here from simpleprogrammer.com. So I'm still in Tallinn, Estonia, and I'm recording another video for you. This time I'm going to answer a question. I got a question from someone who read my book. You know what? I think this was in the Complete Software Developer's Career Guide. You can check out here. And I said that basically you need 5 years of sacrifice to become successful. And I was talking about, I think I probably talked about this in the work-life balance chapter, where I was talking about this idea that, you know, there's seasons in your life, and that in order to like pay your dues, essentially, like in order to have a season maybe where you're working less, you're gonna have to pay your dues. You're gonna have to work hard for some period of time. It's just not gonna happen by itself, right? And so, you know, I think this is a really important concept to understand, is that there's no way to get around this, right? There's gonna be some amount of sacrifice, and it's gonna be some amount of time that's going to be required in order for you to get to a point where, you know, where you're successful. I did this video for the book launch, actually a YouTube live, where I described this better. I'm not going to go through the whole thing here, but you can check out that YouTube live. And I talked about this idea of pushing a boulder up a hill, right? And at some point in your life, you're pushing this boulder up the hill, and what ends up happening is when you're pushing the boulder up the hill, it's really difficult to do, right? But when you get to the top and you start pushing, then the boulder rolls by itself. And that's sort of like what the way I envision kind of the seasons of life and success, is that you're going to start off with pushing a boulder up a hill, and you got to keep on pushing, and you got to get the momentum going up the hill. Otherwise, it's going to roll back down and it's going to crush you, right? And a lot of you are stuck in that phase. You keep on pushing the boulder a little bit up a hill, and then it keeps on rolling back down, right? And you just can't get past that. So I gotta see what's going on over there.
Regarde-moi. Tu peux te lever sans bouger ton pied. Stand up without moving your feet. Yeah? You're good. Perfect. Okay? Okay, guys. Are you all good, Ellen? Yes. Good, Frederick. Good. Okay, so
all right. So anyway, you push the boulder up the hill, right? But you keep on letting it fall back on you, and so you've got to reach the top of the hill, and then when you're pushing it down, momentum's working on your side, and that's where, after you've put in that 5 years of hard work, you know, that's what I was talking about. So the question is, you know, if you're in college, and you know, when do you put in the 5 years? How does that work? So the first thing to understand about this is that this is not a hard and fast rule, and you know, really, there's no guarantee. There's no guarantees in life, in anything, and so I'm giving you sort of an idea, and I'm saying that if you bust your ass for 5 years, you're probably going to be successful. If you're not willing to do that, if you're not willing to take that time, it may take you your whole life. If you're not willing to take that continuous amount of time, and if you're not willing to do it at all, you're probably not going to make it. and basically, even if you are, there's not a guarantee. It's just that there's a higher probability if you're willing to put in that sacrifice, right? So if we go back to the college thing here, when does it begin? It begins as soon as you haven't reached that point. So essentially, if you are still pushing the boulder up the hill, okay, then you need to be doing the sacrifice, right? Because you haven't made it yet. Once you've made it, and you know you've made it, because when you've made it, then the things start coming without you having to work for them very hard, right? The boulder's rolling down the hill, it's rolling by itself. You can still speed it up, you can push it along, right? But it's flowing by itself. And that's the key difference. So if you're not at that point, then you know that you're not at that point. And so what does that mean? That means that you got to put in the sacrifice and put in the time. So relaying this to college, what does that mean? It means that when you're in college, right, if you haven't made it yet, and you probably haven't, that means you got to be busting ass. That means that, yeah, you got to get your schoolwork done. Yeah, you got to get your grades, but you can't be, you know, going out and partying. You can't be slacking off and saying, oh, well, you know, once I get out of college, then then I'm really going to put in the work, then I'm really going to put in the effort, then I'm going to really start trying to make something of myself and put in the sacrifice and do the 5 years of hard work. It begins right away. It begins now. And it may just be, you know, I know plenty of people that have spent their 3, 4, 5 years in college and they've busted ass on the side, right? They started a business, they started selling something, they started making something, they started you know, really working on the side, and they ended up putting in their time already. And I know some people that, you know, have spent their college years goofing off and they've got really not much to show for it. And I know people that have hit it in between, where they put a lot of effort in, they spent a lot of time working on a side project or a business or something like that, and when they got out of college, they were pretty successful. They weren't quite there, they hadn't quite made it yet, but it didn't take them very long after that because they had a good launching pad to start from. So I know that's not like the answer you're looking for, right? Because you just want to know like a formulaic approach, but I can't give you a formulaic approach. I can't give you an absolute answer to a question like this, but I can tell you that there's seasons of life. You got to put in the time, you got to put in the sacrifice. There's no guarantee, right? Nothing is guaranteed. You're never entitled to anything. But if you don't put in the work, if you don't put in the effort, if you don't put in the sacrifice, then you are guaranteed to fail, because it's not just going to happen by itself. So anyway, that's all I got for you. Thanks for the question. Good question here. I'm actually leaving Tallinn tomorrow. I will be flying out to Switzerland, to Genova, Switzerland, and then be there for about 2 weeks, traveling around Switzerland. So I'll be doing some videos from there. So make sure that you click the subscribe button if you haven't already, and click that bell so you don't miss any videos. I'll talk to you next time. Take care.